Good morning and welcome to Vino Karma's forum, Ramping Up Change Capacity in the Food, Beverage, and Hospitality Industries in the Next 90 Days. I'm Amanda Laden, the founder and CEO of Vino Karma. I almost said co-founder. There is no co-founder, it's me. At Vino Karma, we help food, beverage, and hospitality brands become socially conscious organizations. We also create unique events and experiences, bringing people together over food and wine with the goal of creating community, connection, and change. I'm really excited to have all of you here today to talk about this really important subject. As we're aware, the past 18 months with the pandemic have severely disrupted the wine distribution channels, shut down restaurants, and potentially changed the face of the global hotel and hospitality industries forever. The simultaneous impact of the pandemic led to global decline in wine exports, especially to countries with high proportion of wine consumption at social events and in restaurants. These changes have affected all points along the sales channel, from wine production to distribution, all the way to what's in a consumer's glass and the consumer's willingness to dine out and travel. There's also a fear that the past 18 months or so with this slowdown have affected the industry's ability to adapt to climate change, environmental sustainability, invest in innovation, and make strides when it comes to true equity. Today, we're going to talk to three experts who really understand the capacity to change at a personal, social, structural, and organizational level, and what organizations across the entire value chain need to do in order to enlarge their capacity and ability to adjust to current and future changes in the industry. Today, I have an incredible panel of industry experts who are going to share their knowledge and observations. Before I introduce them to all of you, a few things to note. You'll notice that today we are on Zoom webinar. So for those of you not familiar with Zoom webinar, you will see that there is down to the bottom right, a little button that says Q&A. You can ask us questions there. I will be monitoring that the entire time. So although we can't see each other today, you will be able to interact with all of the panelists. There were just too many of you for you to come onto Zoom. And I'm really also excited about that because that will provide a rich conversation. We also have a chat button so you can chat to the panelists themselves, to me, and to everybody else who's on this. Now, I would really love to introduce the three panelists. First, I'd like to introduce you to Treasure Hutchinson, the Vice President, Executive Recruiter for Human Resource Business Partners. She has over 15 years of experience working in the wine and spirits industry in recruitment and coaching and helping leaders to place the right talent and get the right people in the right seats and really helping organizations thrive. Next, we have Bridget Albert, the National Director of Education at Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits and the author of Market Fresh Mixology. She is repeatedly featured in industry magazines and across the industry, and she has over 25 years of experience in the industry. And last but not least, we have Julie Milroy, the Vice President on premise at Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. She is a change leader with over 15 years of experience in the beverage alcohol industry. Her diverse background in sales, HR, marketing, and commercial strategy has given her the skills to make positive impact and create results that are always customer-centric while emphasis on developing people. I'd also like to mention that Bridget and Julie are the co-hosts of Served Up, the podcast. Welcome to all three of you. Yes, I love that, Bridget. I think we keep losing Julie for some reason. I think there might be a connection issue on her end. So we're gonna go ahead with the two of you and get started. And when she pops back in, we'll make sure she's here to answer all of your questions. I'm hoping also that perhaps we can find a way to link her in so that she can add value to this rich conversation. So let's just go ahead and get started. Welcome, Treasure, welcome, Bridget, and welcome, Julie, when you get back.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Absolutely. So happy.
Me too. I think this is going to be such a rich conversation. I really want to encourage people to dive into the conversation as well. I want to start out really by asking, we know, as I just mentioned, the pandemic dealt the entire value chain of the beverage and hospitality industries a blow during the pandemic. As cities, states, and countries are opening back up to full capacity, what things do you feel employers across the value chain need to take into consideration for their employees? Any of you can jump in, and hopefully, I know, Julie, we keep losing you back and forth, so hopefully you'll be able to join. I just asked, and I'll just repeat myself if you didn't hear that, in terms of the pandemic dealing a blow to the entire value chain in the industries, as things continue to open up, what do you feel employers across the value chain need to take into consideration for their employees? Julie, do you want to jump in if you can?
Sure. Sorry about that. As the webinar started, my internet shut down. So I think the employers across the entire supply chain have a lot of things to consider. A pandemic, people have been in a different state of work and life for over a year. I've been reading articles on the impacts of COVID, and I think that, when new habits develop, I think over 100 days, think of that. So I think a lot of new habits have been developed, new ways of living and working. And it's really easy to quickly say we're open and you kind of expect everybody to get right back in it. And I think there needs to be a little bit more consideration on how lives have changed and seeing what this new normal looks like for our companies.
Treasure, do you have anything you want to add to that from your hat, really with that HR piece and thinking about employees across the entire value chain?
Well, part of what happened is that because there was such a large shutdown, especially with the hospitality industry, the beverage industry, the restaurant industry, a lot of people said, okay, so what else can I do in order to subsidize my income? So a lot of people left the industry and went to go do something else. So now, especially California is just now opening, we're talking about the vineyards, the hospitality, the tasting rooms, what's happening. People aren't coming back to work because they found other means of income to do so, whether they, then some people are staying at home because they're doing virtual learning with their children, so they can't come back. So there's a myriad of things that are happening that everyone just assumed, I think employees assumed everyone would just jump back. Well, people had to figure out something else to do. So that's what's going on right now. And then let's say you were in a position where you worked on the weekends and now you don't have to work on the weekends. It's like, well, do I want to go back to serving? Do I want to go back to working in a tasting room? Do I want to go back to those long hours? But wait, now I found a job where I can work from home, where I'm working part-time, or, I'm working in the industry I've always wanted to work in. So what also happened during pandemic is people decided, what is it I've always wanted to do? What did I want to go back to school? Did I want to go get my real estate license? Did I want to write a book? I mean, what is something I've always wanted to do? So a lot of people went after their dreams because they had nothing else to do. And now they're like, wait a second, I'm back in school. I don't want to go back to that job. So that's some of the other things that are going on, not just, going back into the supply chain and things like that. But it's also people, like we talked about, the pandemic was very emotional. So it made you do a lot of thinking. Do I want to stay in this industry? What is it that I want to do, in the long term? So a lot of people have changed what they wanted to do and what's important to them because they had to make that shift.
Bridget, anything you want to add as employers start to think about what to consider for their employees as, the country pretty much fully is reopening? If your city and state hasn't reopened yet, you will be reopening this month.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God. And I know Julie said something about habits. I learned that cold pizza is a great breakfast. Kind of bad habit of that. But, something that we definitely should talk about, that goes hand in hand with the pandemic is we had so much happened as far as change, that started with George Floyd, that started with Black Lives Matter, that everything from LGBTQ to now Asian American Pacific Islander month that we're all, getting behind. And this was something that just wasn't there. So, part of me says, thank you, pandemic. It woke a lot of people up. But with that, it also woke up a lot of people that work in the service industry that we know that can be at times a bit toxic. I bartended myself for many years. I'm currently a brewery owner, and I can tell you that so many times I ate over a garbage can. My lunch, have y'all ever done that? And had to hold it in because I had to go to the bathroom for 8 hours because there were no breaks.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of comfort when you're behind the bar. There's not a lot of comfort when you're a server, when you're a host, when the customer's always right. It can be a bit toxic at times. So I think that a lot, in fact, I know that a lot of the trade, a lot of the industry is looking towards, when they go back to work, they're really choosing places to work based on what do they stand for? Do they have a diversity, equity, inclusion statement? Do they have something that they give the employees right away? First day that says, hey, if this happens to you, this is our plan. And so we're seeing a lot of this. This is very new in the bar world.
Yes.
In the restaurant world for a lot of us, especially those small mom and pop places that do, diversify their staff. And so I think that this is a new age. It's a new, we're into just a whole new process of hiring. I'm sure Treasure can definitely, talk to that for sure. But I think that folks want to feel safe. They want to feel like they're in a safe place. They want to feel like they're valued where they work, and not just being asked to work a 12-hour shift with no lunch break and just kind of being told what to do rather than feel like they're part of a team and a culture and a community that makes them proud, right? This place where they're working.
I think this brings the question up, you're kind of alluding to it, but really around, for restaurants, wineries, distributors, things that policy decisions that they need to be making now to deal with some of these things head on. So you mentioned, when people come back to work, if you're coming back and you're working in a restaurant, if you experience some type of, fill in the blank from a customer, from a manager, here's how we deal with that. So Bridget, because you were talking about that, and I'm also going to turn it over to Treasure here soon, anything different that organizations, whether or not you're the largest distributor in America or a restaurant that's owned by a single owner in North America, what do they need to be thinking about from a policy or decision-making perspective? Bridget, I'm just going to turn it to you again real quick because you're talking about it and you own a brewery. So I think this would be helpful for folks to get your perspective. And then Treasure, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things is coming out with your statement and where you stand. Just saying we have zero tolerance. That's an easy sentence to say. And then have a plan behind it for your employees, that they know, they understand what that plan is and they're behind it as well. I think that's really important, whether you're a big corporation or you're just a small place like our brewery, right? Just saying that this is what we stand for. This is what we won't stand for. And we got your back. We want you to have, a rich experience here. And we want you to love your gig when you come in. And we want you to feel safe. And we want you to be happy to be here and be proud to be part of this team. And that really starts with having a plan and having a statement and having it be part of your mission statement, right?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Treasure, anything you want to add that, you're coaching or talking to the organizations you work with about this as well as they continue, particularly, I'm thinking about, in your sector, large distributors or large wineries who might be hiring again, either staffing for front of house at wineries or even, at the cellar door, or even, sales teams that might be ramping up again.
Well, first of all, I think there needs to be a conversation. You can't just jump back into the workforce going, let's do what we used to do. That's not going to work anymore. It's not. You're not going to get employees back. Our lives have changed forever. it's going to be interesting to see what happens later on with the next generation. We'll go, wow, what did 2020 look like for them? And they're going to be like, oh, you guys used to hug, you guys didn't have to wear masks. That's crazy, So I think where it starts is, number one, when people start coming back, especially into the organization, first of all, having a conversation saying, this is what's going to change. We can't just jump back in and do what we used to do. It's not going to work. But also, it's got to start from the top down. The CEO, president, executive vice presidents, whatever. It can't start down here with the regional managers, district managers, sales reps. It has to start from the top down. If it doesn't start from the top down, it's never going to happen. And it can't just be HR to say, we're going to be doing this for everybody. No, it's not just HR. Yes, they're going to drive the initiative, but it has to start with everybody from the top down. And the person at the top has got to truly believe in what they're saying, not just preach what they say, but actually do what they're preaching. And that's what's key. And having, having workshops and having, lunch and learns and things like that, and having discussions with, the people who are in charge saying, here's how it needs to work, and going to people like me saying, let me help you, because obviously what you've done in the past isn't going to work anymore. So that's where people have changed, like me, come in.
That's great. Julie, I saw you unmute, so I feel like you want to weigh in here.
Oh, yes, sorry. No, I think all the points are really great, but when I think about specific policy and when we talk about the industry, it's very vast, right? So I like to break it up into something that I learned from a business professional, Rachel Nemeth, is you've got the behind the desk people and then the frontline people, right? So I think the policies are going to be different. If you have a role, whether you're in a restaurant where you actually have to physically show up to perform your job, or at a bar, it's going to be a lot different from the policies that you would expect from somebody that has a behind the desk job, where a lot of the work that we've all learned can happen without being in an office. I feel like that's the big elephant in the room right now, is what is that work flex? So when I think of policy, I'm thinking of work-life flexibility, so that people can contribute and provide their best value, but in a flexible situation. Because even though that the world opened up, child's care is still iffy. We're going into the summer. There's just a lot of other things that are happening. So I think it's really important for employees to feel like there is some flex. I know that that's pretty much not possible when you're a frontline worker. So coming up with policies to make sure that they can take care of their home life and also thrive at work. So maybe that looks like a 3 days on, 4 days off, but just something consistent and not just, through assumption and, case by case. I think companies really need to think about what that work flex policy is as people return.
I think, part of this, and Julie, you, Bridget, and I spoke about this when I had you on our recorded show that we have. Part of this is putting the humanity back in work. Part of it is thinking about, we have human beings coming to work every single day, and how, with different needs and different challenges. And there's so many stories that I know all of us have heard over the past 18 or so months, or however long it's, I don't even know how, I'm probably over, how long has it been? 14 months, whatever, it's so time is short and long, and nobody knows what it is these days. But, there's so many stories we've all heard where it's just like, how do we put the human back at the forefront of how organizations, regardless of how big you are making decisions? There's been a few questions which have come in from folks who are watching. I'm going to turn to have you answer the few that have come in. And then I want to go back, because there's some other things I want to dig into about that human piece, but also about the rapid rise in innovation that occurred these past 12, 14 months in the industry. So there's been a question that's come in that somebody was at a coffee shop where they overheard the managers talking about how they're having trouble getting full-time employees back, because employees are balancing the advantages of collecting unemployment or COVID benefits versus coming back to work full-time. Is there something that you think that managers can do to better attract workers in this current environment? Any of you can take it if you.
I'll jump on it just because I saw the question. I think it's a really good question, and it's definitely a topic that's being had. And almost every conversation that I'm having, I hear the same thing.
Mhm.
And I guess my initial response is, how are you going to compete with that, right? Like, what can you offer more than unemployment? And as an employer and somebody that is takes a lot of pride in their business, I would hope that you would have something more compelling than the unemployment benefit. So that's probably going to require more higher wages. And I get it, you know, people are working, especially restaurants, very slim margins. I think there were reports done that it's one of the industries that they don't get to reap the benefits, or not benefits, but they don't get to just increase their prices because food prices go up and you know, the other cost of goods go up, that they have to keep their margins really low. So I know that's a challenge, but it's really thinking ahead. So what other benefits can I offer that compete with unemployment insurance? And also that is temporary. So maybe there will be a shift and more workers willing to work once unemployment goes away. But I think what you really want to focus are those long-term employees, the ones that are truly going to add a lot of value to your organization and help profit together. Something that I've seen very successful in a lot of our local restaurants around the country is a form of profit sharing or equity sharing, something where they feel that they've got some ownership into the program. And this is what I think would be for your really high talent, value driven employees that are going to help grow your business together.
That's great. Treasure, anything else from the attraction and retention piece? Maybe not, solely speaking about restaurants, but with some of the clientele you work with that you think is important right now for folks to be thinking about?
Well, I was watching Good Morning America, and anyone who knows me knows that's my favorite show in the whole wide world. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I was watching this show and they talked about a person named Skylar Reeves, and he's a founder of the Vivilli Hospitality Group in Phoenix, Arizona, or Flagstaff, Arizona, and they're offering free tuition, and that's the retention of employees, and they're actually partnering with, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Yavapai College, Community College in the same area, and so they're providing free tuition, and so therefore, you have to work for the company for so long in order to get the free tuition. And their ideology is that once they stay within the hospitality group, that at some point they'll go into the corporate level. And so, if I actually had tuition reimbursement from one of my old companies, and you have loyalty to them because of it. And then you want to do better because they've helped you along the way and they've provided part of your future. So that is something new that we're seeing on that level. Yes, we see it on a corporate level, but on, the hospitality in terms of, bartenders, servers, the hospitality, industry, we don't see that. And so, I'm thinking about when I was in college, I was a server. I would have jumped all over that. I would have been the first one there saying, I'll be with you for 5 years, So I think that is something thinking outside the box. And one of the things they had mentioned is, what about the cost? Well, the cost of, turning over employees and training, as we all know, is so expensive. You're going to save a lot of money, but not doing the turnover. So that is something that I was just in awe of, especially, being in this industry for so long. I had never heard of on that level.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Of course, we understand too that not all organizations can afford to do that.
Exactly.
As Julie mentioned, there's some simple things you can put into place as you continue to think about what the worker in this current environment looks like. I want to talk about the acceleration of changes that have happened in the past year or so. So I know Julie and Bridget, we spoke about this before, but there's been some positive changes in terms of one thing that we've seen is how sales channels have shifted and how e-commerce is now business critical on all sides of the business. How should organizations prepare for this long-term shift? And I think this is also going to move into the question that somebody else asked, which we can answer after this too. Bridget, I'm going to turn it to you and have you share, what do you think organizations should be thinking about as we think about this acceleration of leveraging e-commerce that's happened over the past 12 months or so?
Well, yeah, I mean, technology is king. We all live on this, and mine is so outdated with my Mickey Mouse cover here, but we all live on our phones and on our computers, right? And we all love the delivery services that have popped up that can bring our spirits, our wine, our beer right from the liquor store to your home. It's pretty awesome. I don't see that going anywhere. I think it's just going to be enhanced and be made easier for the consumer because it works. It totally works. The more that we can leverage technology, the better. And not taking out that element of hospitality, that one-on-one that we all crave right now, and that is so important. But, just to have that option, and it's real and it's here, it benefits us all. It's pretty great.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Julie or Treasure, you want to weigh in terms of, this shift in the sales channels into e-commerce?
Yeah, I'll jump in. As an organization at Southern Glazers, we've launched Proof, which is our platform for all digital transformation. So it includes our customer facing, where customers can actually order their product through us as a distributor online. And it also includes our Salesforce enablement through our CRM, customer relationship managers. So we've got like an internal solution, and then we've got the external facing, which is a commerce site where customers can order. And I can tell you adoption was really challenging before COVID because people like what works, right? If it works, why change? My salesperson comes in, they write it down on their pad. If something doesn't happen, I call them. And since COVID, because that interaction was challenged and it just wasn't safe to go out, our adoption numbers went through the roof. And it's just been incredible. Another thing that we noticed is through the platform, customers are buying a lot more what we call POD, point of distribution. They're finding new products. They love to shop. People go on there when their shift is over in the middle of the night. So I think if you're coming from a distributor perspective, it's really important to start thinking about how your customers can purchase your product through the platform. When it comes to suppliers, I think an online presence is extremely important. And there's things like Reserve Bar, where maybe as a supplier, you can't really afford to have a strong online presence, but you can use these what we're calling it now is like the fourth tier. Mm-hmm. It's these online platforms that don't necessarily own the product, but they help with that online exposure. That's a great alternative. And I think every single brand should be exploring that. And then when it comes to the restaurants, social media presence is more important than ever. I think the ones that had the strongest social media presence really gained a lot of traction during COVID. They were really able to get out their to-go menus and virtual programs. So, I think technology and accessibility is important no matter where you are in the wine and spirit supply chain. The value chain. But, I do want to just tap into the question, are QR codes here to stay? And because I think it goes right into the restaurants, right? I mean, you didn't really have like an online commerce platform. That was all for retail. That's what, Instacart and that's all retail. But now and Uber Eats. Now you're starting to see alcohol being able to be ordered through these online platforms. And then we talk about the QR code. They're here to stay. It costs a lot less than printing menus. And where you see that evolve is that you can click a QR code and you can actually order right through your QR code through platforms like Bebot and Toast, where I think that that's the future of that frontline technology, is not only being able to pull up the menu on your phone, but actually order that specific item, order your next drink, and somebody comes to you and says, hey, here's your Manhattan, here's your, you know, your entree, and still have that customer connection, but you take out all of the inconvenience in between.
Any other hospitality tech any of you see that will be on the rise? I do love this, whoever asked this question. I think this is such a brilliant question because, you know, I know, you know, in this current environment, we've all been thinking about what kind of sub categories of business are going to crop up and what things are going to happen that we hadn't imagined that we could solve for. And I think this industry has been a little reluctant at times to innovate. We necessarily haven't looked, I think, you know, spirits, wine could be looking more to the spirit side. Beer could be looking more to the restaurant, you know, like they could be looking all around, or to hotels. So anything else you see that is on the rise?
Yeah, I think, specific companies, I think Toast, Bbot, and that's BBOT. And those are the ones where you can order and get the product brought right to you within a property, right? So you think of ordering through Uber Eats where it gets delivered to you. Well, these applications, it can get delivered to you, or you could be sitting in the lobby at a hotel. The bar is like 10 minutes away, and they, by geo target, they know exactly where you're sitting and they can bring it to you, and your credit card's already, your Apple Pay is already connected. So I think those, you're going to see that continue, and it's going to just be like a no-brainer. Every restaurant and bar will have it. I also think that the fourth tier, like Reserve Bar and those type of companies, you're going to see more and more of that, and it's going to start blurring that line between supply and distribution.
And what do you think that means in terms of how employers need to think about, this is for all of you, how employers need to think about staffing up for that future? So, you know, I think, and I'm gonna caveat this by saying, I think in the past, particularly in the wine trade, you know, we've hired from within, you know, we've really hired people. Well, did you work at X wine company? And I know, Treasure, you and I talked a little bit about this too. Did you work at Y wine company? Oh, you don't have 10 years of wine experience or spirits experience, then you must not have the skill set to work in our organization. I don't know, Treasure, if you want to take this on in terms of, you know, what do you think as we continue to see innovation and technology, what do you think employers need to be thinking about as they hire at various levels within leadership from a skill set perspective?
I think what last year has taught us is that we can't think within the box anymore. That's over with. It's done. And if you are, you're not going to survive very much longer. You just can't. You have to change with the times. And that's been this, you know, since the time, you know, the beginning of time, it's been like this. But now more than ever, I mean, I actually had a client that hired, he's in the wine and spirits industry, and he's a supplier / importer. And the CEO / president decided, I'm going outside the industry. And this must have been 5 years ago. We were like, what? Like on purpose? And he actually went outside the industry, hired 2 individuals, one from Red Bull. And this is an importer, a wine supplier, very prominent wine supplier. And then he also hired someone from Hershey. What? And let me tell you, thinking outside the box, their revenue and sales went through the roof because they thought outside the box. Sometimes if you hire within the industry, when you hire the same type of thinking people, you're going to get the same type of results. It's the definition of insanity. Well, how do we get rid of insanity? You got to think outside the box. So I think what's going to have to happen is, especially in the wine and spirits industry, hospitality industry, whatever have you, we have to go to different industries, whether that mean, you know, I don't know, Google, whether that mean, you know, whatever, you know, the you know, CPG industry, whatever have you, because they have the same type of skill sets. They're just selling different products. But I think our mindset has been, it's got to be this way, but it doesn't, because it brings something different, you know, to the organization.
I also think about, you know, with the rise in technology, I mean, you think about all these engineers who are running around in Silicon Valley who are creating AI for certain things. Like those are skill sets that this industry is going to have to start to look at if you don't. And I know, you know, for big distributors like Southern Glazers, you might already have teams of folks doing that. But, you know, these are things that in, you know, even 5 years ago, the industry as a whole wasn't thinking about in terms of how do we scale our technology. Bridget, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I think just one obvious thing, and that is just let y'all know, like I worked from home for about a decade, for a long time, because I was on the road all the time. And when I have my home office days, I was on the phone. I wasn't on Zoomy here, you know. I didn't start doing the Zoomer until COVID hit.
Zoomer.
And
At
it's
the Zoomer.
I believe it's here to stay. I don't believe that's going anywhere. I can tell you at Southern Glazers that we definitely leverage Zoom for our educational platforms, for our seminars, for our workshops. And I know that there is some Zoomy like fatigue for people like myself who are educators, right? You can get a little burnt out, or even somebody like Julie, who runs meetings all the time, you know, whatever it might be, we get a little bit tired of being on screen. But you have to think about it, the rest of the planet that maybe haven't had a chance to experience the Zoom. It's easy, it's accessible. You can get people, and I've had people in the room from all over the world at the same time. How cool is that? You know, where in the past, we'd all be getting on a plane, spending a ton of the company's money, right? For our hotel rooms, for our meals, where we can all be together virtually. And definitely our customers can leverage this. Our suppliers are leveraging this for education, for getting out, you know, their events and having online events, online tastings. I don't believe for a second that this is going away anytime soon. It's just, it's very affordable, it's very fun, and it's accessible to all.
How do you think that changes the traditional sales right along with a supplier, you know, with a winemaker or a distiller?
Well, I think we still have to do the ride along. So I don't want to take away from the one-on-one in person. That is the most important thing. That's how you build relationships. However, if you have a distiller, like tomorrow, I'll actually be doing a Cavassier course. It's internal, and we have someone from Jarnac that will be Jarnac, France, right? Who just wouldn't be able to participate any other way but Zoom. So I think it's a very convenient, easy way to tap into those folks that are overseas, those winemakers that maybe are overseas or are not in your market, and get them in front of your customer in such an easy, you know, fun way where you can have Q&As one-on-one, where in the past it just wouldn't have been possible or affordable.
Anything else to add, anyone, on that?
Even on the interviewing side, I mean, you know, we all know that that's what I know. But you know, before we didn't Zoom. You know, if you Skyped, it was like, whoa, you know, but you still did an in-person interview. And so now companies are like, okay, now how do we hire? We need to hire, but nobody can fly. How do we do this? And so Zoom has become very important in terms of interviewing. And now, I mean, I have candidates who have actually received jobs during the pandemic who never went into an office. Yeah. You know, they Zoomed the entire time. They, you know, received their laptops via mail, you know, all their information via mail. You know, let's have a conversation in Zoom, you know, and do your training, you know. So think about how much money that is saving the organization, and how much, you know, you feel comfortable interviewing in your own home, just sitting behind a computer, and you don't have to worry about, you know, flying somewhere and being nervous. You can do it out of the comfort of your own home. You just want to make sure that you look, you know, as presentable on top, as long as you don't stand up and no one sees what you're wearing on the bottom.
Right. You know, I think it's a great point, you know, from a company perspective too, that, you know, there's new ways to do things, and you can be trained to give a good interview. You could be trained on the things that need to happen on the candidate side as well. I think all of you know that, you know, my husband and I moved from Boston to San Diego in a pandemic because he got a new job, and his entire process of getting his new job was online. He didn't even meet it. He's never been to his office still. So he's still never been, but even meeting his boss in person during the pandemic, we were all outside because we're in in San Diego, but it's a new thing. Like, and I think it's just going to show that there are ways we can do things that we hadn't thought possible before. So I want to move to the Q&A. There's some great questions coming in, and also a comment I don't want to dismiss, and I want to make sure that we highlight. So Danielle has let us know that, just back to our point about the hospitality tech, that Wink and Drink, which is a great name, by the way, is also an app which is available in Apple and Google stores, which provides prepaid drink menus and in-app announcements available for hospitality businesses. I don't know how long Wink and Drink has been around, but it sounds like it's such a great option, particularly for restaurants thinking about how they manage with limited staffing right now, and also how they continue to increase loyalty for their customer base and potential new customers as we all start dining back out. So Danielle, thanks for pointing that out. Candace has also brought up a good question, and then I'm also going to move to Erica's. So Candace said that, we know one of the negative impacts of COVID for many was becoming less healthy, and some which was driven by consumption of more liquor. I think there was just an article out about that yesterday in the New York Times and the New Yorker, one of them, given the technologies we've talked about that are making it even easier to purchase, receive the product, what responsibilities do you see companies having to balance this? That's a pretty loaded question. It's a great question too. Julie or Bridget, do you want to jump in and take that?
I would like to take it for just a second. I mean, I can tell you that at Beam Suntory, for instance, definitely have offered throughout COVID all sorts of healthy classes online, like yoga, meditation, all sorts of resources through their website, The Blend US, which is amazing. There's actually a huge spotlight on health, mental health, as well as physical health within the beverage community. And so many suppliers are stepping up to do their part and to be part of the conversation.
That's great. And, I think in each of our conversations we've had with our recorded show, we've talked about mental health, and something that I think even was taboo talking about this industry, within this industry, even a few years ago. So I'm glad you brought that up, Bridget, because I think it's really important as employers are bringing folks back to work, as they start to think about the impact, either seen or unseen, that this has had on everybody. And I think at certain phases for all of us, and or most of us, we've experienced some form of fatigue or had challenges with our mental health during this time, particularly as we haven't had connection with others. So Bridget, thank you for bringing that up. Julie, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. I think, when we talk about the technologies and the conveniences, I think we have to be very clear that it's not necessarily to get people to drink more, but it's to take out those inconveniences and the roadblocks when you are going to order or have a drink. And with that said, yes, I mean, it's been stated, it's all over, a lot of research done that, day drinking has soared. And I think unfortunately, people have come out of the pandemic consuming a lot more alcohol. And I think, speaking on behalf of a distributor that we work for, we do a lot of causes around social responsibility. And as a distributor, we are obligated to do many programs to prevent underage drinking. And I agree 100%. I think that there's more that we can do from an alcohol industry to really educate on responsible drinking. That's something that we advocate for, but we're also in a 3-tier system. So we're not right there with the front line that's actually serving the drinks. Some states have certain laws for servers that serve drinks. Some, there's none, So I think that that's really important. And I'm glad you bring it up because there's a company called Opus Training. Rachel Nemeth is the CEO, and they do frontline training for back of the house employees, for restaurant kitchen staff, and they do all text training. And she's actually reached out to us on, they're having a lot of requests for safe serve alcohol training. So yes, some states there's the license, and this isn't to replace the certification, but they have a need from their staff on how do you manage that. And so that's something that we're looking at on behalf of a company on how we can help provide good content to continue the safe serve.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Erica has a great question. So Erica's question is, as we think about making the hospitality industry one that also supports the various needs of employees, a predictable income can be an important factor. Do you see the tipped minimum wage changing or being eliminated, or there being much more conversation and exploration around this issue? That's a great question as well. Anybody want to jump in and take, Julie, you want to jump in and take this?
Yes. The tipped minimum wage changing or being eliminated. I'm seeing it, and I think this is something that existed when you think of there's some restaurant groups and chains that have a system where the tips are shared and then distributed. So depending on whether you're a server or a busser or back of the house, you get an X amount of percentage. So I think that continues, but I agree, Erica, 100% is people need stability. And I think that that's something as restaurateurs are competing and trying to get not just labor, but top labor and top talent is consistency is very important. I've seen other industries. I worked for FedEx, in my previous life, and there was a minimal pay, right? So you knew at a minimal that you would make X amount of money each week, and they paid weekly, which was amazing too, as somebody starting your career. And then if their process was you want to get in and out of there as soon as possible, right? Because it's FedEx and packages are unloading and you want to get the plane reloaded as quickly as possible. So you're incentivized to get your minimum weekly allowance, your pay. And I think it was like you're scheduled for 40 hours, but you're going to get guaranteed 25 hours. So everybody would love to work as little as possible and get that 25 hours, and they know they're going to get paid. Now, if they want to work longer to get their full 40 hours, they have the opportunity to do that. I think that restaurants and bars need to start considering that. Like, this is your minimal pay, and then what additional tips that you get, but it's not a standardized thing. And I'm glad you bring that question up, Erica, because as we're competing for talent, those are the things that we should be thinking about.
Oh, sorry, Bridget. I was just going to say it's so fascinating because I think this again is when we become so insular as an industry, when we look outside in terms of what are best practices that other types of organizations, regardless of how big they are, implementing, what could that look like from a scalability when you look at your own business, and what does that mean in terms of operationalizing it? And I think that's really important. Go ahead, Bridget. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I love the example that Julie gave, and something to consider is like the mom and pop restaurants who cannot afford to raise that minimum wage. It would bury their business. So something that has to happen is that the consumer needs to be educated on the cost of goods. They have to understand that, there does need to be, I think, a major price increase on the cost of goods that are offered on the menu. So, if we want to have the minimum wage be raised, then we need to raise our prices, because if not, it won't be profitable for the restaurant, right? Or bar. And we really have lived in a fog always with the bar and restaurant world, not understanding the customer has no idea what the costs are to run a business. They have no idea why something is priced on the menu the way that it is. And so I think that I'm all for increasing that minimum wage, especially for those that are tipped. I earn tips for a good part of my life, so I completely get it. There's also a lot of, as just speaking from someone that's been on that side, there's also a lot of hesitation for those who want a bartender served to work in a place that maybe pulls tips, because maybe someone's not pulling their weight, and then they automatically still get that cut, right? So it's going to require a ton of education for our consumer to understand, like, look, we want everybody to get paid well. We want it to be predictable, a fair income, but in order to do that, we need to raise our prices.
Thank you. And I know, Treasure, you probably want to jump in here too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, Bridget was saying, I worked in restaurants. I get it. I lived off of tips. I also think who's not educated are the consumers. I mean, in terms of how to tip. I mean, once you work in that industry, you're going to tip 25, 30% because you just know that this person, back in the day was making $2.13 an hour. Let me make that clear. Not $12 to $13, but $2.13. So that's what's important. If people know that, then they'll understand, well, maybe I need to make sure that I tip accordingly. So that's another thing. I've gone out to a couple of restaurants in the last couple of days, and I almost see the consumer like really like studying, the bill, like, okay, but they haven't worked in a long time. And I see their minds going like, okay, well, I should give them this, but maybe I should do a little extra because they haven't been working. And what about the restaurant industry? So I start to see everyone working, but then you have what's going on and, with the meat industry right now that they're being cyber hacked. So now the meat prices are going up. And so now, the prices have got to go up because of supply and demand. But then can the restaurants afford to increase their prices that much? But they have to if they want to serve some beef. So it's a circle, I have to give it to Amazon. And I understand Amazon is a large company, but they were the first during the pandemic to say, we're going up to $15 an hour. That was such a big deal, but should have been a big deal. No, we should have been at $15 an hour, $15 an hour a long time ago. But then other people have started to follow. So that has been a huge, step in the retail industry, but the hospitality industry is a whole different world. So It's just a matter of us trying to, like to what Bridget was saying, maybe we need to increase the prices at the mom and pops. But then will they come to the mom and pops? Because if I can get, a blue plate special, you guys can tell I live in the South, but you get a blue plate special for $5, can I pay $7 for it or $8? Well, I pay $5, for a meat and 2 veggies. So, it's just kind of figuring that out.
Yeah, and that's where the education piece comes,
Absolutely.
the customer. And I think that the other part is that if you're a customer and you're watching this right now, please have patience when you go into a restaurant.
Yes.
So many folks that were not servers in the past, were not bartenders, maybe they were a manager, are doing those jobs, and they're trying really hard. And they're understaffed. So the worst thing that the consumer can do right now is, and I can't stand Yelp. I think Yelp is just, I'm not a fan. So I just think that, right now, patience, kindness will win. Just be patient with your server, with your bartender. You might have to wait a little extra longer, and make sure to tip, because a lot of these folks have been without a gig for 14 months.
I completely agree. And thank you for bringing that up. I'm here in California, and I've also, witnessed people's behavior towards servers. And it is unacceptable. These people they're serving you. They have not been working for a long time. And restaurants are trying to ramp up right now. And I agree with you. We need to be kinder, or, witness things where people storm out refusing to wear a mask. Like, these people's health are on the line. And, we really need to be cognizant that it's not always about us. There's also other folks in the mix here. So I just want to touch on Danielle's question, because it ties directly into this, and then go up to the other question we see coming up. Danielle says Bridget, she completely agrees with you. How does the discussion of the economy within the hospitality industry become mainstream? I don't have an answer to this. Julie, do you?
I think a lot of those conversations happened over COVID. I think it's the first time we've seen the restaurant industry really rally together and kind of claim, and, inclusive of the hospitality industry. There were a lot of panels that I had, attended during this. And one was a really big one from the New York Restaurant Coalition that they put together, the New York Restaurant Alliance. I don't know exactly who, but one of the advocates were talking about the fact that restaurants and hotels are the second largest employer in the country. And it's actually the most forgiving industry. So you don't have a degree, you are just starting over, you're an immigrant, so many different things, and there's opportunity. I don't think as an industry, we've really kind of powered together. We do have great organizations like the National Restaurant Association that really did a lot of work to lobby for some of the stimulus and the relief, but I think that the conversations have started and they need to continue. And I do believe that people do need to understand the value of physical labor and help, as well as the cost of goods, because as much as we can't, small mom and pops can't pay for minimum wage, $15, people also need to be able to live and have, and be able to pay their bills, right? Unless it's like a part-time job, or you target specifically students in college. So what value are you offering them besides low pay so that you can operate your business? Maybe it's career development, maybe it's training, maybe it's learning from a master brewer, maybe it's learning from the sommelier. And it turns into more of a long-term solution. So it's like, you know what, I'm only making $15 or $12 an hour, but look at all of this that I'm getting. Lean on your supplier and your distributor partners. I mean, getting those industry certifications, they've got so many training programs. And if it's about getting certified, you can do that. And it's something that they can use on their LinkedIn so that they know that there's more afterwards. So I think that, to answer the question, we have to keep that conversation going. We need to be very transparent on the cost of goods. And we also need to think of other ways to provide value to employees so that it's not just, I'm going to pay you more, so now my salad is going to be another $5, because that's not sustainable.
Yeah. Oh, great points, Julie. Thank you so much. I also think about, things that are sort of coming to the fore in the mainstream right now about the industry as a whole. We've seen a lot happen in the industry in the past, year and a half, not only with regards to the pandemic, but also when it pertains to the sexual harassment pieces, inclusivity, equality, equity, and those are starting to come to the fore in terms of people taking action, whether in their own communities or with the, in terms of the restaurant trade, what's going on in Washington State right now, people really saying, well, we are not going to spend our dollars there. And so perhaps the conversation and those folks that are putting this information out there into mainstream media need to also be talking about this, need to be talking about what it means to be a frontline worker, what it means to actually try to sustain a restaurant in any environment, and also bring in the right talent. So, maybe this conversation can lead to other conversations, which starts to move that change forward and to further have that conversation. So, Julie, thank you for that. I want to move to this question from somebody who's listening to this conversation right now. They say many states are beginning, and I think we touched a little bit on this in the beginning, but I'd love to hear if you have any other thoughts. Many states are beginning already open back up to 100% capacity indoors. California in a week or two. Yeah, so I mentioned I'm here in San Diego, so we're at full capacity come June 15th. Are there must-dos for the industry to bounce back, not only in the next 90 days, but more immediately during this inflection point? Great question. Anyone want to?
I'll jump in. Get ready. I've done a little bit of traveling. I'm based in Miami. I feel like we've been open throughout the pandemic. I mean, not joking, but kind of joking. It's been pretty open, and a lot of it has been outdoor capacity or outdoor dining with limited indoor capacity. I've personally sat outdoors all the time, but I can tell you indoors looked like it was full capacity, so I know full capacity means packed, but it was pretty full. What I've seen is, because of the labor conversations that we've all had and really being challenged with compelling people to come back into this industry, you're going to be overwhelmed. I mean, restaurants are overwhelmed trying to deliver, right? Back to Bridget's point, like be nice to your server. They are overwhelmed. It's going to take longer to get served. People are on edge because they're out and they want the best experience. They're back to spending money. I think you really need to think about being able to supply the demand. So just because you can be at 100% capacity, should you be at 100% capacity if you don't have the staff? And I've seen great restaurants manage that. I'm like, well, but you have all these tables open. Okay, but we don't have staff. So that section is closed. And I think that if you want to survive or you want to offer that same experience and the best experience from your establishment, you need to be really honest with yourself with what you can deliver. Another thing I think exploring is different options with ready to drink. You know, so those are like pre-made cocktails, draft cocktails, where your mixologist can still create their amazing drink, but they make it through a batch process and you can convert. I mean, so, you know, not to take anything away from our beer friends, but you can convert 1 or 2 of your beer taps. It's not a lot of money. And now you can have draft, right? So as they're making the certain cocktails that can't come from a draft, somebody that's looking for your basic stuff like margarita or an old fashioned can get it from the draft and it's going to be delicious. So that's different ways that you can deal with being able to serve all your customers as you fully reopen.
I just want to add one thing to what Julie said, and I think that it's also taking a good hard look at the hours of your operation. You know, to be open costs a lot of money, guys. It really does. And so just adjusting those hours, maybe just a little bit on top of what Julie said, making sure that you can deliver that experience. Maybe it is less tables, maybe it's just your patios open for now. Maybe make it more of a slow roll than just gangbusters. And then, you know, that's when you see definitely the issues. But also look at your hours and see, like, maybe you don't need to be open so early. Maybe it's a little bit later, or just closing a couple hours earlier will save you some bucks.
Thank
At least
you.
just for now.
I've seen that as well. You know, we were in Chicago and a lot of the places that are usually open for lunch are only open for dinner now. It's sad, but a lot of businesses have still not come back to the office. So a lot of these restaurants really lost their lunch crowd. I know it's a big problem in New York City. So now you have limited options for lunch because people are choosing, and there's random days of the week like Monday or Wednesday that they're closed. But you have to do what's right for your brand and for your business, because as people come in, you know, you get that one opportunity when they're back, and you want to make sure that ultimately they get that same or even better experience from coming back.
Thank you. I know we have a few more minutes in this conversation. I have a few more questions for all of you. And then before we close, I'd love to share, actually, I'll share it right now for those of you who probably have to jump off at the top of the hour. We are hosting our next forum on July 8th, specifically focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation as it pertains to your brand and your business. It's going to be a very rich discussion. We have a consultant who is specific to DE&I in organizations. We also have a Black female spirit owner who it will be hopping onto the conversation. And we are waiting on another panelist, so stay tuned. So I'd invite all of you to also attend, and we might even switch up the format. I'd love feedback if anybody wants to actually be on Zoom and would rather do it that way. We're open. I just wanted to make sure that we gave these ladies the spotlight for this forum because of how many of folks have actually joined. So again, that's July 8th. I'm sure we'll be sending out a reminder here soon. I want to ask again, you know, we've touched upon a lot of things in terms of the ramp up that's happening right now. It's happening very, very, very quickly. We've also touched on, you know, some of the enticing things that organizations as well as restaurants and other brands could offer for their employees. Anything else in terms of anything you want to add with regards to how much culture plays in this current environment in terms of hiring and retention? Treasure, I might go to you.
I knew you would. No, I think that, as we're saying now after, what we said earlier about George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, all the riots that have happened, the protests that have happened, just getting off of, like I said, Black History Month, and then, the Asian American month that we just celebrated. I think that if you weren't awake and woke and know that you have to look at diversity and inclusion, then you must be sleeping, because I don't know how you could not know now. And if you did not know in the past, that's okay. But now you need to know, because you're not going to be able to sustain a business without knowing about the different ethnicity, cultural, whatever. You don't have to be an expert, but you got to know that there are going to be some differences. And once you understand that, you're going to attract people. And that's what's most important, that people now are searching for certain organizations where it used to be, well, I have to work for them. Not anymore. You don't have to do anything anymore. Now it's a choice. And so now people want to feel like they're included. They like me for who I am, regardless of what it may be. And so I think what's important is that having an open mind. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's going to run out there and have an open mind and know what's going on and know everything about everything. But I think what it is saying, I need some assistance. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. Can you assist me? And asking for help. Whereas before we didn't ask for help because we didn't need to. Now you need to ask for help, because now people want to feel appreciated. They want to feel included. And so we didn't have that in the past. I felt like I have to save this organization because this organization pays my bills. Well, after pandemic, people are like, I don't have to do what I don't want to do anymore. And you have taken away my salary. So I have figured it out. It's not about money anymore. Where in the past, it's always been the golden handcuffs. Well, guess what? The golden handcuffs are gone. I'm breaking the chains, so that's the important thing, is that employers, restaurants, hospitality, whatever have you, have to understand that they're different people, and the millennials are different than Generation X and all that other good stuff. Well, we knew that before. Now we know it now. And so I think that's the important thing, is having an open mind and saying, I need help, and what do I need to do? And having those conversations, which we didn't have in 2019 and before, but 2020, eyes are open.
Yeah. Thank you. Bridget or Julie, anything else you want to add with regards to this culture piece that we haven't already touched upon?
Look, I just think it's super important to understand that everyone thinks differently than you, looks differently than you, and had a different background than yourself. And so when you go in to hire, open your eyes to someone else's experience, appreciate it, make that space a space where someone can feel like they've got that badass entrepreneurial, I can't even say it. I'm
Entrepreneurial.
Right, yes, right, where they just want ownership in that space, and where you can learn from each other, because we're all so different, and that's what is so special. And we can learn from each other and try to understand each other, but you gotta be open to it. It starts with being open, and Treasure, you said it the best, having the conversations at work, having the conversation when something tough happens. When Black Lives Matter last summer, did you reach out to someone in your organization that was Black and say, are you okay? When the Asian hate started really coming to the forefront, did you reach out to your Asian friends and saying, and people that work with you and saying, are you doing all right? Can I help you? Do you need something? Do you need a friend? So just understanding everybody's experience is different. The things in the world affect everybody differently. And I think the more diverse, team that you can create with all the great ideas, you're really gonna create that special experience for your customer in the end.
Thank you. Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Treasure and Bridget shared. I think exactly what Treasure said. It's not an option. If you don't take social issues, and it's proven, I mean, in all the post-COVID 2020 insights that you read, whether it's through Nielsen's, McKinsey, all the consultants, they tell you that consumers, one of their top choices on how they pick brands and who they're going to do business with is based on what they're doing around social justice and social responsibility. It's no more, oh, I really like this because it's the cool, trendy brand, or it's got the right value, versus cost. It is people want to know and they care. So I think from a consumer perspective, I also think from an employer perspective. So we were at one of our first happy hours yesterday, and a young lady just started with our company with Southern Glazers, and she had moved down to Miami from New Jersey. She's only been with the company for 2 months. She came from a whole nother industry. And she's starting with one of our most entry-level jobs is inside sales. And I can just tell from her approach, her presence, I mean, she is the real deal, and she will excel and she will do amazing things. And so, she was asking me some questions about what my job is and what I do. So I kind of explained my career path. And then it kind of slipped out, and I was like, oh, and the social justice work. And she's like, well, like what are you doing for, and that was what she was more interested with that than where I've gone in my career. So I was like, well, we started a podcast. I'm not going to like plug in all of our stuff, but it's something, and Bridget and I have been very passionate about. We're using our platform. The company is allowing us to do it. Our ownership made a very strong statement. So it gave us all permission as leaders to empower us to come up with great ideas and really put that forward. And when I was sharing that with her, she was like, you know what? I told myself, and of course I told her, please hang on, learn everything you can, because there's going to be so many opportunities within this company and you're going to excel. But she said, I knew that my next role, I was not going to be looking for a job. I was going to be looking for a company. And this is what the top talent is thinking today. You can't get one past them. They do their research. They look at everything. And yes, she's probably taking a pay cut, taking an entry-level role, but she's going to start talking to others and learning that there's going to be more opportunity. And I selfishly want to make sure that we keep her because we need more people like her.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. You've just given me a good lead into my final question for all of you before, we summarize and close out today. And that is, how do you imagine the future of the hospitality business as it pertains to the customer experience tied to the employee experience? Julie, since you were just talking about that, anything else you want to add to what you just said as it pertains to how employees are looking at your business, as well as how it ties exactly to the customer experience?
Yeah, and actually when you dive into those insights in regards to what people expect from company stance on social justice and social responsibility, is they also want to know specifically what you're doing for your employees. And it's not just what you're doing as a PR thing to tell everybody that you really care and that you made a statement or you donated money, right? That's the easy part. The hard part is putting that to action. So I think consumers and coming from a B2B, our trade, which we call the trade, so the people that purchase and build our brands, so they purchase our wines, they purchase our spirits to then sell to the consumer. They want to know, what's your organization doing for you guys? What are they doing for your salespeople? How are you, do you have an opportunity as somebody of color, minority? They're going to be looking at that. They're going to look at your leadership and say, well, how mixed is it? You say that this is important. How much do you show up? So consumers do look, I feel that, and I know I do more than ever now. When I go into a restaurant, I look around, who's the management, who's the staff, who's the servers, how diverse it is. And it's not something that you can hide from, that you can put under the rug and come out with the right statements. People are going to see from your action, and your business is going to be impacted because of what you choose to do.
Beautifully said. Treasure, just back to that question about what do you imagine for the future of this business as it pertains to the customer experience tied to the employee experience?
I think it's important to just understand on both sides, whether it be the customer side or the actual organizational side, or I think or the employee side. People want to see people that look like them, or who or act like them, or something, a glimpse of who I am. I think that's why elections are so important, because I want to see someone that looks like me. And finally, I see someone that looks like me, and everyone's happy, because it's like, it may be one person, it may be two people, but at least someone looks like me. So I think part of what needs to happen is that, there's not just one particular person on this earth. There's many, 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 many different people. And I think once both sides understand that, the future will be brighter, and it'll be better. But it's gonna take time. We can't expect it's going to happen overnight as well. But I would hope to say that after what has happened with 2020, I see that there's hope and there is change coming. Is it happening as fast as we want it to? No, nothing's going to happen that fast. But at least the conversations, as I said it before, are starting to happen. So that is what my goal is for the future, is that there'll be an interchange of experiences and cultural events that people will come together.
That's great. Thank you. And Bridget, last but not least, anything how do you imagine the future for the hospitality business as it pertains to customer experience tied to the employee experience?
I think the future is super bright, guys. And I am so full of hope and encouragement. Just the fact that we're having this conversation today is such a great start. Something that Treasure said was so important, that, that we build a community, both for the people that are serving us and when we're a customer, that reflects our community, right? That's inclusive to everyone, and that everybody is happy to be part of. Like I said in the beginning, I think gone are the days of working, and we all work so hard behind that bar, man. When you're behind it, or if you're on the floor, there's lots of aches and pains your body goes through. But I think that gone are the days of eating over the garbage can because you were told that you have to work a 12-hour shift with no breaks. I feel like right now that we all have a voice, and we need to use that voice to have the conversations that will start the change.
Beautifully said. Well, I cannot thank the three of you enough. I know today we covered so much in terms of how we can think about this industry as a whole, how we can start to be prepared for changes that will continue to happen. I think the one thing we all know, and has been reiterated over the past several months, is that change is constant. And our organizations, I'm sure, and the restaurants and the distributors who have been watching today, I'm sure got so much value out of all of you thinking through what to think about from the employee level, what to think about in terms of how they ramp up in the next few days up to 90 days, as well as what to think about the current environment and the culture they want to create. So I thank all of you for being here. To follow Julie and Bridget, please go find them on Served Up the Podcast. You can find them on iTunes, on Instagram, everywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and also to connect with Treasure at HR Business Partners. If they will allow us, we can send out their information after this so that you can follow all of them. And please remember to follow us at Vino Karma. We're at VinoKarma_project on Instagram. We have a recorded YouTube show that goes out every week where we highlight change makers, tastemakers, winemakers. So please go follow us and like our channel on YouTube. And again, I would invite all of you to please attend our next forum on July 8th, which focuses on diversity in the industry and how to think about your brand. And last but not least, we are hosting our first industry conference symposium on October 28th, where we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation, innovation, and social change. And so as we say here at Vino Karma, please continue to go out there and create change one sip at a time. Cheers. Thank you, everyone.